ঠিকঠাক আছে, সব শোনা যাচ্ছে তো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ
স্যার।
স্যার।
আজকে একটু ডিস্টারবেন্স হবে মনে হচ্ছে, আজ মাঝখান থেকে আবার এর মধ্যে লোডশেডিং হয়েছে, দিয়ে ওয়াইফাই কানেকশন রিসেট হলো, হাজার ঘন্টা ঝামেলা। যেদিন ঝামেলা হয় সেদিন একসঙ্গে সব হয়, বুঝলে? আচ্ছা, কতটা হয়েছিল একটু বলবে আমাকে?
স্যার
হ্যালো?
ওই আনবার্নিশ নট টু শাইন ইন ইউজেল ওই অব্দি।
নট টু শাইন
টু
মিউজিক।
রাস্ট টু রাস্ট আনবার্নিশড হয়ে গেল।
হ্যাঁ ওই
হুম হুম,
ওই
ঠিক
লাইনটা
আছে।
অব্দি হয়েছে।
আচ্ছা, স্টার্ট করি। দেখো, তোমাদের আশা করি এখন আধ ঘন্টা দেরি হয়ে যাওয়ার পরেও লোকজনের জয়েনিং কমপ্লিট হবে না, অ্যাজ ইউজুয়াল। দেখো, ঠিক আছে, না শুরু করি তাহলে। ওখানে কি ছিল আর কি, যে লাস্টের পার্টটাতে পেয়েছিলাম আমরা যে গ্লিমস দ্যাট আনট্রাভেলড ওয়ার্ল্ড হুজ মার্জিন ফেডস ফরএভার অ্যান্ড ফরএভার when I move, how dull it is to pause to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use। এই অব্দি হয়েছিল, তাই তো? এবার রেফারেন্সটা কি সেটা পরিষ্কার বুঝতে পারছো, যে আলটিমেটলি দেয়ার ওয়াজ আ পার্টিকুলার রেফারেন্স দ্যাট।
শোল্ডার মেটাফর দেওয়া এখানে সে, তাই না?
হ্যাঁ
শোল্ডার মেটাফর দেওয়া।
হ্যাঁ, শোরের মেটাফর, ওটাকে নিয়ে বলছিলাম আর কি। তো সেখানে বলছিল যে হাউ ডাল ইট ইজ টু পজ টু মেক অ্যান এন্ড, টু রাস্ট আনবার্নিশ, নট টু শাইন ইন ইউজ। তো সেই শোরের যে রেফারেন্সটা এখানে ছিল আলটিমেটলি, তো সেটা প্রিফিগার করছিল কি, যে সেই জাস্টিফিকেশনটাকে আমি তোমাদের আগেও বলেছিলাম যে একটা পার্টিকুলার জাস্টিফিকেশনটাই এখানে রয়েছে থ্রু আউট দ্য পোয়েম, এবং সেখানে সেই ব্যাপারটা কিন্তু মানে রিপিটেড হচ্ছে, জাস্টিফাই করছে যে whether you see that somehow I must not think about the life that is being completely being imprisoned or something like that। এই ব্যাপারটাকে কখনো সে আর কি অ্যাকসেপ্ট করছে না, সেটাকেই বলছে। তো সেই ব্যাপারটাকেই কন্টিনিউ করছে, দেখো, যে অ্যাজ দো টু ব্রিদ ওয়ার লাইফ, Now, when it is the matter with the particular line that to breathe were life, generally here you will find that somehow uh, movement. That means here you will find the basic orientation of flux versus fixity. Okay, that means movement versus stillness that have been pointed out. To breathe where life, if this particular expression actually refers to the particular form that as long as you breathe, as long as you are moving, that means you are living. So if you stop yourself, if you stop to breathe, and if you keep yourself within the periphery of the four worlds, then certainly it is not to be considered as life anymore. Right. And then he continues that life piled on life were all too little. That means, say, for example, if you have such a kind of temperament, such a kind of mindset, and you are thinking that, okay, exploration is the fundamental focus of my life, exploration of the new islands or exploring the new islands and, committing different kinds of journeys and committing different kinds of uh, to be specific, the adventures and so. And to do that, it seems that life piled on life. That means it is not single life. Rather, you have more than one lives. So that's why it's being considered as life piled on life. So these have to be considered as all were all too little. Right. And then he says, and of one to me little remains. So that means if you think that you are an explorer, if you consider that you are an adventurer, if you think that somehow I must commit the adventure to explore the land, explore the world, and gather informations, gather the knowledge from them, then it seems to be that life piled on life are all too little. That means if you had say four or five or six or maybe 99 lives to be specific, then it would be short, you see. So that's why it is considered to be all too little, because if you try to compare the amount of time you need to substantiate or to justify your demands, then ultimately it consists to be or considered to be little. But I don't have that one. So what it says that life piled on life were all too little, and of one, that means I don't have much number of lives or many number of lives, but ultimately I have a single life. I have one life, and of that particular life, little remains. What does it mean? Little remains. You see that somehow, as I don't know whether it was possible for Ulysses to know that I don't have much time. Okay. Or maybe you will find that as it is Odysseus as Ulysses, and he has more than normal human understanding, more than normal human knowledge. So therefore, he is very much, very much thoughtful to some extent regarding the future of his own life, and ultimately, it's a kind of an intuition that he gathers here. Okay, and that's why he says that life piled on life are all too little, and of one, that means I don't have many lives, I have one single life, and of that one, to me little part actually remains, because we know that with the readers who actually uh, we know everything about what happened to Odysseus when he committed the second journey, and that only 3 years later he will die certainly. And that's why probably it is a kind of an indication that the little part that is remaining, you can also say, okay, Odysseus now he is an old man, and ultimately he is thinking that somehow I do not have ample time, ample moments to revive my life or experience my life properly, and that's why he considers, okay, little remains regarding that. But somehow if you think in terms of the Tennysonian canon of taste and Tennysonian canon of writing, then ultimately you will certainly say that, okay, Odysseus doesn't know that how long he will live, but Tennyson knows that after 3 years Odysseus is going to die. So therefore, the particular expression "little remains," it signifies at one point it is the intuition of the person who is speaking, or rather it is somehow being associated with Tennysonian representational politics. So that's why he says that life piled on life were all too little, and of one to me little remains. But somehow it is not the thing, you see. That, as I've already mentioned, that somehow you have to think about, uh, whether you will think, you will consider life in its negativities, or whether you will think in terms of the positivities. Ultimately, if you think with the cloud or maybe the silver lining, it is your choice. So that's why what you will do, either you will think that, okay, I have a minimum part to do, to perform in this particular life. I don't have ample time, I don't have ample years ahead. So therefore, I must keep myself with my family, and ultimately, I will pass the remaining days with my family or close proximity with my family members or something. It is one particular temperament, whether you will just wait for your death to come. And the second temperament of is obviously that you were thinking, okay, the days are short, you see, the number that the days are numbered, so therefore I must not consider about the days that are very short or that are numbered. Rather, I will experience each and every moment. Okay, because as the days are short, so therefore each and or every moment has to be enjoyed by me, has to be experienced by me properly in the life of adventure. And as we are reading Ulysses, we are going with the temperament of this man. So therefore, you will find certainly that he will consider with some adventurous notions and something. He says, but every hour is saved from that eternal silence. This eternal silence is obviously it is indicating towards the death, where you will find that the silence, when the silence actually comes, silence it is symbolic as you can identify because it is the end of life, and along with the silence there comes multiple, the stoppages. Okay, different kinds of stops are coming. So that's why it says that, but every hour is saved from that eternal silence. That means I have to count each and every hour. And somehow, if I consider that, okay, I have barely 3 years to live, so therefore I have to count each and every day, and I have to live a life, okay, full of possibilities, full of adventure, full of experience, full of movement. So somehow it is not the eternal silence that I should wait for. Rather, it is I must consider that I have this amount of time. So I must lead the life properly. So that's why every hour is saved from the eternal silence. So each and every hour is valuable to you. Don't waste your time. Don't consider yourself as vulnerable at this very moment. Just enjoy the life, just move. Okay, don't be encircled by your four walls. Don't be, a kind of imposed self imprisonment within you. The different temperaments, as you can see. So that's why it says that, but every hour is saved from that eternal silence and something more, because I know it's a bringer of new things. So it is not the life and counting the life and counting the days. Rather, I must think about something more. Because you know that each and every moment, each and every day, it will bring new things to me, new experiences, new adventures, new life, you see. That means whenever you were in midst of the journey, whenever you were in midst of various kinds of explorations and experiences, then it provides you the new things. And not only that, the new things will certainly give the particular kind of enjoyment that you were thinking of. So therefore it says something more, a bringer of new things. And then that's why I must say that the while it were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself. Again, the term storing and hoarding and something like that. And you have already traced that Ulysses actually pointed out this before, because the storing and hoarding, these particular phrases, these particular terms have been pointed out by Ulysses just to refer to the quote unquote savage people of Ithaca. And he no longer considers himself to be one among them. That's why he says that it is vile, obviously. It is not something very good. It is something unworthy or maybe cowardly. It were for some 3 suns to store. The 3 suns are actually referring to the 3 years, okay? You will consider that it is the 3 years that is being pointed out. So that's why he says that it is vile, it is unworthy, it is unnecessary and cowardly for some 3 years to store and hold myself within the claustrophobic situations of self-imprisonment within the four walls, within the territory of Ithaca. Okay, that's why it's again a kind of a powerful justification that Ulysses is providing here. that I must not keep myself within these worlds. He says, therefore, that, and while it were for some 3 strands to store and hold myself, and this gray spirit yearning in desire. So I am, okay, it's true that ultimately I am now at my old age. It is true that my days are counted, okay? So, but ultimately, if you think in terms of my temperament, in terms of my desire, if you consider my mindset, if you consider the temperament of myself, then you will find that I don't have the self, or maybe the thought process of a coward, gray spirit, or maybe the coward kind of a man. Okay, so that's why the aged spirit that has been pointed out as gray spirit, though it is aged, but ultimately you will find it is yearning in desire. The desire is always present. And desire for what? And then these 2 lines are very significant to concentrate, to comment on the temperament of Ulysses, to be specific. It says that there is yearning in desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star. What does it mean to follow knowledge like a sinking star? You will find certainly that the particular kind of an orientation that had been provided by Ulysses in this particular poem beforehand, the reference to the journey. And there was a particular reference, that as I move, that the gleams the untraveled world, whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. So therefore, if you think in terms of the sinking star, then certainly as you move, you will find the star is sinking. Generally, as you move towards west, ultimately you will find the star in its own place. So that means when it is the reference with the follow knowledge like a sinking star, okay, here the term sinking star is being associated with knowledge. That means to grab that vision as you are moving, you will find that it is gradually sinking. Okay, it is not being sunk, rather it is sinking. And that's why whenever you are moving, whenever you are trying to get a glimpse of that sinking star towards west as you are moving, you will find that it will be in its own position. And that's why the star that is sinking beyond your imagination, beyond your level of visibility, as you are moving towards him or towards it to identify it properly, just like that, just like that particular exploring mind, just like the particular sea voyage that you are committing, you will find that it is not simply you are chasing the sinking star, rather you are following knowledge, because the sinking star is being classified, is being oriented, is being, you know, to some extent it is being compared with that of the knowledge. And that's why to follow knowledge like a sinking star, it is obviously being incorporated in terms of your exploration, or maybe the particular temperament of exploring something, of gaining something, of gathering something. And that is the typical Victorianism, to be specific. You see that somehow if you go with the typical Victorian orientation of life, then certainly you will find Victorian period is a particular period when the Britishers are always been thinking in terms of something new. They are considering that somehow, okay, after the Industrial Revolution, it is the particular time to explore the new countries so that I can gather some informations, I can gather some new culture, I can gather some, to be specific, after the industrialization, you have found that somehow the raw materials and the laborers are always being important. So therefore, you have to trace something new, and you have to gather something new. So this was the particular, okay, there were doubts, but ultimately there was also faith. And the faith for gaining something. That particular temperament, that I must not stop myself within the peripheral designs of my habitual setup. Rather, I have to consider something new. I have to consider something that will be beneficial for me. So fundamentally, the people that are considered to be the typical Victorian outfit, you will find that somehow the people are always thinking like that. And here also you will find that so far as the typical works of Victorianism is working, so therefore these kinds of temperaments that to follow knowledge like a sinking star, beyond the utmost bound of human thought. So there is a kind of a limitation. So I must break this limitation, and ultimately I have to think about something, that is beyond my reach, that is beyond my thought, that is beyond my knowledge, obviously. So that particular orientation that Ulysses is propounding here, it is obviously, you will you can relate this particular temperament to the mythical Ulysses. You can relate this particular temperament to that Ulysses that have been propounded by Dante in his Divine Comedy, in Inferno, actually. So ultimately, somehow, what I'm trying to suggest here, that if the certain question or the topic comes, that consider this particular poem as a Victorian poem, the temperament of Ulysses and what Ulysses is actually speaking regarding the justifications of these kinds of adventures, of gathering knowledge and move beyond the human thought, and explore the new and getting the adventurous knowledge or something. So all these are indicating towards the kind of temperament that the Victorianism actually propagates. So therefore, everywhere you will find that the journey, it is not to be associated with any particular kind of fixity or stillness. Rather, I must have to think about the flux or the movement, as movement itself is a part of our life. And as long as I move, so long I will live. So that particular temperament, everything can be related with the typical orientation of Victorianism. Now, in the next section, you will find there is a particular reference to Telemachus. Remember, I have provided you the topic, that the significance of Telemachus and how Telemachus has been presented in this particular poem, Ulysses, and how, to some extent, Ulysses is providing, or Ulysses is dumping all the responsibilities, the familiar responsibilities, to Telemachus, and to some extent he is speaking that somehow, okay, it is not my work, okay, to look after my household gods, to look after my wife, to look after my people of Ithaca. Rather, I must engage myself in the explorations of new countries or new islands somehow. So that's why, so this particular section, rather, you will find this is important for two particular reasons. One, it is actually focusing on the orientation of Telemachus, the importance of Telemachus to this particular poem, and how, and two, that is Ulysses as a poem of escape. Why it is the poem of escape? As I've already mentioned, that okay, if you think about the Victorian temperament, if you think about something positive, if you think about the adventurous self of Ulysses, and as an explorer, okay, everything will be good. But if you think in terms of the other people, if you think about Ulysses as the ruler of Ithaca, if you think in terms of Penelope, that means Ulysses' wife, if you think in terms of Telemachus, that is the son of Ulysses, you will find certainly there are some responsibilities, some commitments that the person has to do. Somehow you will find that to some extent, to justify his own temperament of an explorer, Ulysses is deliberately negating his responsibilities. And that's why it is somehow a kind of escape notion or escapist orientation that have been associated with this particular poem also. So that's why this particular section and the temperament of Ulysses, these are important for these two sections. Again, I repeat, the first one is associated with Telemachus, his role and responsibilities to this particular poem. And second, as a poem of escape, how Ulysses is actually driving all the responsibilities and commitments away, okay, and justifying his own demands to some extent. So that's why it is a kind of an escapist notion that Ulysses is propagating here. Okay, so now let us read this particular section, what it tells us. It says, "This is my son, mine own Telemachus." So fundamentally, you will find, as I mentioned, that it is a particular poem which is to be considered as written in dramatic monologue structure. So therefore, you will find, as I've already mentioned, that in a particular kind of dramatic monologue, we find that somehow, you see, a single speaker will be in work, okay, in action, and ultimately you will find that there is a particular reference to the person, or maybe a group of personages who are the silent listener or listeners rather. Remember, they're silent, okay? They will not speak anything. They will not utter anything, or he will not speak anything, or he will not utter anything. So I don't know whether it is being completely being that is the silent speaker, a silent listener, is Telemachus, or there are the silent listeners are the group of mariners, okay, who are present there. But somehow it is being pointed out that the speaker is single because Ulysses is speaking, and it's a dramatic monologue. I have already discussed about dramatic monologue, its features, and how this particular topic can be related with this particular poem also. So here it is being propagated, it is being stated that this is my son, mine own Telemachus, okay, to whom I leave the scepter and the isle. The scepter and the isle, when you will think in terms of the scepter, ultimately it is being pointed out that scepter is a particular symbol of monarchy. And when Ulysses is speaking that this is mine own son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I am leaving the scepter, that means the monarchy, and the island. The isle means the island. So therefore, you are just, distributing all your responsibilities. You are just driving all the responsibilities away and giving them to Telemachus. So now it's justifying to some extent. He says that I am leaving the scepter and the isle, and then it says, well loved of me. Here you will read the term of. You see, the preposition of should be read as by. That means well loved by me. That means this Telemachus is a person, and it's very well loved to me. It is well loved by me. Why this particular of is being incorporated? Because it is an archaic usage. Okay, archaic, the old English pattern actually, where the by this particular term was not there, so of was used. So that's why it says that this is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter and the isle, well loved by me, and he is discerning, that is sensible to fulfill this labor. So you see that ultimately we will find to some extent that Ulysses is to some extent patronizing Telemachus, and he is admiring Telemachus and his temperament. But at the same time, you have to consider that by dumping the responsibilities to Telemachus and saying that, okay, Telemachus is a good man, Telemachus has the potentiality of doing everything, okay, he has the ability. Ultimately, you are just keeping yourself away from these responsibilities, right? So therefore, in that particular admiring words, behind the admiring words, you can devise a scheme. So you can identify a scheme, a particular device that he's been using. So that's why it says that this is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter and the isle. And he is well loved of me, that is well loved by me. He is very sensible to fulfill this labor, I know. And by slow prudence to make mild the rugged people. Again, this particular term is very important. Why? Because it says, as I've mentioned, that when it was the matter with Ulysses' responsibility, it was the matter with Ulysses' commitment. Then we have found that the term that he used to describe his own people, it was, you see, that it was the savage race, and now you will find a degree lower. It says a rugged people. Okay, it's not savage, rather rugged. So ultimately you will find that somehow the rugged or rough people, which is a degree lower to the term savage, and that's why to some extent he is lessening the impact. Okay, and he's to some extent justifying, okay, this Telemachus has the potentiality, he has the ability to control them, to subdue them, because I know he is very much discerning, he is very much sensible to fulfill this particular work, and he is a prudent person. I know that by slow prudence, he will learn, okay, how to make this mild, rugged people, okay, and through soft degrees, subdue them to a useful and to good. So ultimately, all the responsibilities have been kept aside, and then it has been said that somehow, okay, the this man Telemachus, he's solely he's very much, the Telemachus. This man, he is capable. This man is being associated with the particular references of something positivity, some temperament, good temperament, and everything. And then it has been stated that somehow he has the prudence and he can make mild the rugged people, and through the soft degrees he can subdue them, and he can tame them, he can make them useful and good, and he is most blameless, you see, and he is centered in the sphere of common duties. So that means you can identify that somehow you cannot blame Telemachus, he is blameless, and ultimately uh, he is being upbrought, or the upbringing has been made to be associated with the common duties. So that's why it's been stated that he is centered in the sphere of common duties. Okay, so ultimately, what are the uncommon duties? Probably the uncommon duties are associated with Ulysses alone. Telemachus is a man who can perform the common duties. Telemachus is a person who can perform the common duties, and Ulysses is a person who is not to be associated with these, right? And that's why it says that he is decent, not to fail in offices of tenderness. Here, the term decent actually means something proper. So, he's a proper man, he's a decent man, and he will not fail in the offices of tenderness. What is the particular reference of the offices of tenderness? You will find certainly that the offices of tenderness is being associated with something related to the duties regarding his mother and so. So these have been pointed out here. So that's why it has been stated that he is a decent person, not to fail in the offices of tenderness. He will pay meet adorations. That means he knows how to do everything, the adorations to my household god. So all the responsibilities, whether it is the matter with his mother, whether it is being associated with the people around, okay, the reference to the household gods, referring to the people of Ithaca, referring to the mother, everything. When I will be not present in this particular scenario, when I am gone, certainly he will perform all his duties, the common duties, you see, and these are the ordinary duties. And then the last line is being pointed out that he works his work and I mine. So there lies the basic problem. It says that when I am gone, okay, here is a punning, obviously, when I will be on my journey or when I will be dead, both these gun can refer. So ultimately, he says that he works his work and I mine. What does it mean? What does it indicate? That he will do his work, he works his work, and I mine. So here you will find that Ulysses is deliberately Ulysses is deliberately differentiating two particular things. That means he is differentiating between the two particular reference of the works. The first one is Ulysses's work, that is obviously different from that of Telemachus's work. So fundamentally, you will find that certainly the kind of orientation that Ulysses is propagating, the kind of orientation that Ulysses is pointing, one particular work is being associated with Telemachus and one particular work is associated with Ulysses. And somehow he is making a kind of a distinction. He is kind of differentiating between the two particular references, so two particular points where you will find one particular work that had been related to the ordinary work, and that particular ordinary work can be related with Telemachus, and the extraordinary works that can be related with Ulysses alone. So that's why it's a kind of a justification to be specific, and I must say that ultimately this particular kind of justification is very significant and very important here. Okay, so up to this, any question? বলে নাও আগে, তারপরে আমি পরের পার্টটা যাচ্ছি. Okay, any question up to this?
স্যার এই মাত্র বললেন না যে একটা অর্ডিনারি ওয়ার্ক আর একটা আনঅর্ডিনারি ওয়ার্কটা হচ্ছে
এক্সট্রাঅর্ডিনারি ওয়ার্ক আমি বলছিলাম যেটা তোমার দেখো, অর্ডিনারি ওয়ার্ক মানে কি, মানে এই সমস্ত কাজগুলো যে কেউ করতে পারে, মানে এই সব ব্যাপার স্যাপারগুলো these must have to be performed by Telemachus or anybody else. Ulysses considers as I am much more superior than everybody else, you see. আলটিমেটলি এই সমস্ত কাজগুলো করার জন্য আমি নই, আমার কাজগুলো আলাদা, এর কাজগুলো আলাদা, ও কাজ করুক, আমি আমার কাজ করব। জাস্টিফিকেশন, আমি এটাই বলতে চাইছি আর কি, যে কোথাও যেন
আনঅর্ডিনারি কাজটা মানে হচ্ছে এক্সপ্লোর করাটাকে বলা হয়েছে।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ওর যে টেম্পারামেন্ট গুলো, ধরো ইউলিসিসের যে টেম্পারামেন্ট, ইউলিসিস যে কাজগুলো করতে চায় সেগুলোকে প্রিফিগার করছে, কোনো মিথ্যে না। মানে বুঝতে পারছো তো নোশনটা কোন জায়গাটায়, মানে ও এই কাজগুলো করতে পারে, আমার বলে আমার ব্যাস ঠিক আছে,
সে তো নিজেকে সুপিরিয়র ভাবে স্যার
একদম ইউলিসিস কনসিস্টেন্স সুপিরিয়র, মানে সেটা তো আছেই সাইড বাই সাইড। আর কোনো কোয়ারি বলো এই অবধি, তারপরে পরের পার্টটা পড়ছি।
স্যার বলছিলাম যে এই ইউলিসিস যে জাস্টিফিকেশন গুলো দিচ্ছে সেটা কাকে দিচ্ছে, এবং মানে এই জাস্টিফিকেশন গুলো কি টেনিসন আমাদের দিচ্ছে নাকি ইউলিসিস ওর মেইনারদের দিচ্ছে?
দেখো, জাস্টিফিকেশন মানে কি বলতো, মানে তুমি বলতে পারো যে এখানে ম্যারিনার্সদের
নাকি এটা একটা ওর সেলফ কনসাসকে দেওয়া জাস্টিস?
একদম, আমার তো সেটাই মনে হয়,
মানে নিজে যেটা ভুল করছে বা ঠিক করছে সেটারই একটা জাস্টিফিকেশন নিজেকে দিচ্ছে,
একদম নিজের কাছে নিজের উত্তর, একদম টু সাম এক্সটেন্ট। কেউ কাউকে জাস্টিফিকেশন দিচ্ছে না, আলটিমেটলি এগুলো সবই আর কি খুব প্রবলেমেটিক আর কি ইস্যু, নিজেই নিজেকে উত্তর দেওয়া। লাগছে কেমন ইউলিসিস? ভালো, কবিতাটা ভালো?
ভালোই লাগছে স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার ভালো।
আর কোনো কোয়েরি কারোর?
স্যার এই যে এখানে সফট ডিগ্রি বলতে কাদের বোঝানো হয়েছে? সফট ডিগ্রিস
না, সফট ডিগ্রিজ বলতে ওখানে পয়েন্ট আউট করছে, দেখো ওখানে ওখানে পয়েন্ট আউট করছে কি লাইনটা, যে থ্রু সফট ডিগ্রিজ। এখানে সফট ডিগ্রিজ মানে কিন্তু গ্র্যাজুয়ালি, বুঝতে পেরেছো, মানে টাইম টু টাইম, আস্তে আস্তে শিখে যাবে ও। টেলিম্যাকাসের বয়স বেশি নয়, কিন্তু আমি জানি যে আস্তে আস্তে এগুলো সব ও লার্ন করবে।
ঠিক আছে বুঝতে পারছি।
ডু ইউ হ্যাভ এনিথিং টু আস্ক? কারোর কিছু কোশ্চেন?
আর স্যার আপনি এই যে মানে এই আগের পার্টটাতে টু ফলো নলেজ লাইক আ সিঙ্কিং স্টার্ট ওই যেটা বললেন না, সেখানে আপনি ওই ডিভাইন কমেডি নিয়ে একটা জিনিস বলেছিলেন, ওটা একবার বলুন না একবার। ডিভাইন কমেডি ইউলিসিসের সাথে এটা
না, আমি
মিল বা
বলছিলাম যে
পার্থক্য কি আছে?
না, ডিভাইন কমেডি ইউলিসিসের মধ্যে তো জার্নির ব্যাপারটা রয়েছে।
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ, এবার জার্নিটাকে বলছিলাম আমি, যে ফলো নলেজ লাইক সিঙ্কিং স্টার মানে কি, মানে তুমি ধরো মানে সে সিঙ্কিং স্টার নয়, কিন্তু নলেজটা এখানে সিঙ্কিং স্টার বলছে, বুঝতে পেরেছো?
হ্যাঁ
মানে
হ্যাঁ।
নলেজের যেরকম কোনো শেষ নেই, তেমনি সিঙ্কিং স্টারের দিকে তুমি যখন ধাবিত হবে তখন কিন্তু কন্টিনিউয়াসলি তুমি একই জায়গায় তাকে দেখতে পাবে।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।
তাই তো হয় না, তুমি যদি ওয়েস্টের
হুম
দিকে
হুম
মুভ
হুম।
করো, একদম পুরো তাই, মানে এটা সাইন্টিফিক ওরিয়েন্টেশন যেটা বলে আর কি।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।
এবার ঠিক ওই রকম ভাবে, মানে এটার কোনো শেষ নেই আর কি, মানে সুতরাং যখন কোনো কিছু শেষ নেই তার মানে জার্নিটাও সব কোনোদিন শেষ হবে না,
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ। ঠিক
সেইটাকে
আছে।
বোঝাচ্ছে আর কি। আর কারো কোনো কোয়েরি? ডু ইউ হ্যাভ এনিথিং টু আস্ক? নেই তো? তাহলে পয়েন্ট পারে যাই নাকি?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
ওকে। Okay, so justification has been done. Okay, as you have found that somehow in the last stanza or last section of this particular poem, Ulysses has given this particular orientation, that it is not my duty to lie behind or something. So therefore now it is the time to commit for the journey. In this particular section, that means from this one to towards the last line actually, you will find some philosophic orientations will be provided. And it has been pointed out that there lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail, there gloom the dark. So there lies the basic problematic issue. As I've already signified or pointed out, one particular topic of this poem is whether the poem can be considered as an allegorical poem or not. That means whether this particular journey that Ulysses is trying to propagate, or a journey that Ulysses is trying to commit, do you consider it's not simply a kind of a journey, rather it's a journey towards eternity? That means, is it a kind of a journey towards heaven? Is it a journey that means that indicates that okay, your time is over, now you are dead, and ultimately you will commit a journey towards the never ending? That means heaven. So that's why you will find the kind of journey and the kind of symbols, a kind of implications that Ulysses will provide here in this particular section of the poem. This will significantly being incorporated as something allegorical, that it is রূপক অর্থে ব্যবহার করা হচ্ছে আর কি. So it is not simply a kind of a journey, rather it's a journey that can be related with something extra or something pointed out. So it says, therefore, that there lies the port, the vessel's puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. We know that somehow, whenever the journeys have been committed or had been committed, the journeys were generally being taken at the time of evening, okay, or night. Generally, it has been pointed out by different kinds of writing and different kinds of narrative. And here you will point out that certainly it says that there gloom the dark, broad seas. Why dark? Because it's reflecting the dark sky, obviously. The seas are broad, the gloom, there gloom the dark, broad seas. So everywhere you will find that certainly these are indicating to the seas, that means it's on the verge of committing a journey. This is the time to set sail. And ultimately, it can also refer to that it is the time when we have to, start for the life hereafter. That is the allegorical framework. So here he says, therefore, there lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. Here the puffing the sail means, it's a twilight situation, and ultimately they're preparing, they're just hanging the sails there, and the puffing of wind, the winds are coming there, and they are preparing for the journey, to be specific. And then he says, my mariners, he's directly addressing to the mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me. So in this particular reference, you will find that as in the previous section, a previous part of this particular poem, we have found that Ulysses has referred somehow that these were the mariners, okay, who remained as the faithful mariners to him for these times, you see, the long times. It is something extraordinary. You see that what actually shows, what actually happens, that whenever such kind of journey is being committed by the mariners or maybe the captain of the ships, somehow it happens in those ships. There are some kind of tussles or there are some kind of problems that arose. The conflicts or feuds appear between the mariners and the head. Okay, but somehow the mariners whom Ulysses is addressing here, they remained faithful, okay, to themselves, and somehow they were faithful to Ulysses, and that's why it's very significant that Ulysses is referring to them. They were the fellow members of his team, and somehow they were the friends and they were the peers, to be specific. And therefore it says that my mariners, and then it says the souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me. Toiled means, it's the labor, different kinds of laborious activities that they have done, and wrought, that means here it's been pointed out that they are working with him, and thought with me, that means in each and every kind of thought, in each and every kind of actions, they always uh, gave their useful comments to me. So that's why it says that whenever I am thinking about my mariners, I consider that they are the persons who have toiled with me, wrought with me, and thought with me. These are the mariners who ever with a frolic welcome, frolic, it means something playful and joyous or sportive rather. So it says therefore that that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and sunshine. Why thunder and sunshine? These are the two different and obviously contrasting situations that the seamen actually faced, rather. So generally, you will find that thunder and sunshine, if you consider that this is the journey is being considered as the journey of life. So therefore, thunder and sunshine, these are actually referring to two particular states of your life, whether it is negative or whether it is positive. And ultimately, these are my companions, the mariners, who always thought and wrought and worked and toiled with me. And they, with frolic welcome, almost in a playful, joyous, and sportive welcome, they took the thunder, that is the negativities of life, and obviously in positive times. They were with me and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. So why it is free hearts and free foreheads? Why it is opposing? This free heart and free foreheads, this is actually referring to the kind of problems that actually arose that I have just spoken just now. You see that there are different kinds of mutinies possible. Okay, and these are the mariners who actually opposed them. The free hearts and free foreheads, that means the forehead refers to the lords, that is the fortune, and hearts referring to the desires that people had, the reference to the mutinies, and each and every moment who actually tried to oppose me, and they actually protested, they opposed them. And fundamentally, to some extent, they remained a faithful follower, they remained a faithful companion of me, a companion to me. So that is being pointed out here. And then the addressing is continued. It says, my mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and sunshine, and opposed free hearts and free foreheads, the mutinies within or mutinies without. You and I are old. Now it has been pointed out here that ultimately the time has passed, and now we are in our old age. Okay, you and I are old, and old age hath yet his honor and his toil. So if you think about the old age, now the temperamental problem, the question of temperament, that whether you will consider everything has been lost, that is the despair, or whether you will consider that okay, something is remaining, and whether you will think about that particular remaining part, or whether you will think about something that is completely lost. That is the temperamental question. Okay, and as we are reading a positive poem, certainly we will find that Ulysses will obviously think about something that is remaining. The remaining part is very important here. So that's why he says that you and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. It's true that okay, we are old, but nothing has been completely being erased from us. We have something, okay, it's something full with limits or something, but ultimately we cannot say that everything has been lost, because the old age hath yet his honor and his toil, but death closes all. So what should he do therefore? Okay, some days are remaining, true. We are in our old age, true. Should we wait for our death to come? Should we think about that what is lost? No. We must think about that we have actually. We know because the death will certainly come and death will close everything. So old age has its own honor, old age has its own toil, but death obviously closes all or everything. So that's why, sorry. So old age hath yet his honor and his toil, but death closes all. But something at the end, it's an archaic term, it means before. That means something before the end, some work of noble note may yet be done. That means, yes, ultimately death is gradually approaching towards me. I know that the time is short, but I know that some days are present today, ultimately, with this particular reference and so. But something before the end, some work of noble note may yet be done. So কিছু তো করা যায়, কিছু তো সময় আছে, এই সময়টাকে তো আমরা প্রপারলি ইউটিলাইজ করতে পারি, তাই না? সেটাকেই এখানে প্রিফিগার করছে, কিন্তু দেখো যে এখনো কিন্তু কিছু কাজ করার বাকি হয়তো আছে। So we will not be like those unbecoming men that strove with gods, সেটাকে এখানে পয়েন্ট আউট করছে। দেখো এখানে পরিষ্কার বলছে যে আমরা ওই unbecoming men, who are the unbecoming men? Seriously speaking, this unbecoming men refers to the unworthy personalities. So we are not those unworthy personalities. We are not those like the Ithakans, right? We are a different kind of people, right? So we will not strive with gods, মানে সেই হরি দিন তো গেল সন্ধ্যা হলে হয়ে আমরা থাকবো না। We have to think about something. So therefore we have to think about something positive. We have to think about the explorations, the new countries or something. So we are just not like the unbecoming men that are striving with gods. And now the light begins to twinkle from the rocks. These are the lights. Just behind the lights, the twinkling, as I've already mentioned, that it's a kind of an evening. The evening is settling down, and ultimately we'll find somehow that the twinkling of the stars, this is the twilight situation, and ultimately it is the time for committing a journey. And that's why he says the light are beginning to twinkle from the rocks. The long day is waning, it wanes, it is decreasing, it is coming to an end. The slow moon is gradually climbing up, the deep moans round with many voices. So these are all natural descriptions. These are the different kinds of embracings of nature with Ulysses' temperament. These are the summonings of nature. Come towards me. So therefore, it says, it is the apt and appropriate situation when I must commit the journey. It says the light is beginning to twinkle from the rocks. You know, the twinkling stars have been incorporated. The long day is decreasing, it is waning. The slow moon is climbing. The deep moans round with many voices, the deep moans that are coming from the seas, whether it is the wind or the sea waves that are creating these kinds of moaning sounds. This is that moment. Come, my friends. It is not too late to seek a newer world. That is the temperament. চড়ই বেতি, আমি আগেও বলেছিলাম। So this is not too late. It is not too late to seek a newer world. So something is remaining, you see. And it is not too late to seek a newer world. So we must think about to seek a newer world, to explore the newer world. So therefore, push off, sitting well, in order to smite the sounding furrows. So these are the possibilities or procedures. When you are just placing uh, the boat or placing the ship to some extent, the launches or something like that, when you are just pushing them off, and you will have to sit well because you have to smite the sounding furrows. This actually happen, you know, that whenever you are trying to commit the journey, whenever you are just moving from the seashore and coming into the seas, so therefore the sea waves are creating some problems and you have to just break them, just smite them. So that's why push off, sitting well, in order to smite the sounding furrows. So do you not think that it is actually being indicating that you have to cross the barrier. And this particular reference to crossing the barrier is very much associated with death, because between death and life there is a particular barrier. You have to break the barrier. You have to think about the life hereafter. You will it will be break free, obviously. You will find a similar kind of orientation, probably the crossing the bar. This is a kind of a poem, you see. Or maybe you will find that somehow in Dover Beach, certainly you will find a similar kind of orientation being incorporated. Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Okay. And these are quite common in English literature, when you will find that somehow between life and death a particular kind of a bar is being incorporated, and that breaking the bar is very significant, for you have to commit for another kind of a journey. This is very common. Okay. In the poems, in Two Voices by Tennyson, it is also another particular poem where Tennyson is referring to this particular breaking the bar and meeting with the wife afterwards. So somehow, when he's stating that somehow I must commit the journey, or we must commit the journey, we have to smite the sounding furrows, we have to push a little off. So these are literally referring to committing for the journey and placing the ship in midst of the sea by crossing the seashore and related sea waves and so. But ultimately, it can allegorically signify that committing a journey to the unending or never ending or eternity. That means the life hereafter. So that's why it says it is not too late to seek a newer world, push off and sitting well in order to smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the births of all western stars until I die. So here he says, in a literal point of view, that this is my temperament, this is my purpose, this is my focus, to hold to sail beyond sunset. That means where sun is setting, I have to move beyond sunset. To some extent, it is a kind of a Ptolemaic idealism that he is being orienting here. But ultimately, it is not so that Tennyson didn't know about the Copernican theories, but rather you will find, as it is a kind of a pagan orientation he is incorporating, the typical Greek belief system that at the time being oriented that Earth is flat, and ultimately there must be a particular kind of reference where the sun is actually sinking, or maybe the particular place where the western stars are taking birth or something. So these have been incorporated. That means I have to move beyond that particular limit. Again, that particular orientation, you see, that I have to move beyond that particular horizon. So he says that for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the births of all the western stars until I die. I have to move. I must not stop. It may be, there are ample kinds of dangers that are ahead. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. Okay, that's what happens in the seas. Therefore, you will find there are different kinds of gulfs and whirlwinds, you see, ঘূর্ণি যেগুলোকে বলে আর কি. So ultimately, it might be possible that I will face some different kinds of gulfs is there, and we will be washed down. That means it will be, I will, obviously the ship will be sunk. It might be possible. It may be that we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles, whom we knew. So this is the particular reference to the Greek mythology, where it has been pointed out that when Achilles was dead in the Trojan War, and he was placed in a particular place where the burial has been taken place. But ultimately, you will find that the happy isle is actually referring to heaven, therefore. Okay. So it says that it may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isle where Achilles has been, he has been buried. Or maybe it is indicating that happy isles are actually referring to the heaven. Okay, we may reach heaven and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, therefore, it says, though much is taken, much abides. So there lies the particular realization. Okay. So it says that, okay, multiple things. You see that much has been taken from our lives, but I must say that much abides. So much are it's remaining, you see. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven. Remember that they were the most powerful armies, okay? So therefore it has been pointed out that we do not have that particular strength in old days that we had actually beforehand. We could move the earth, we could move the heaven because we are the powerful army. But because we are now old. But I have to say that we are not despair regarding the particular thing that we are losing at this moment. We have to consider which we are, okay? What we are, we are. This is the temperament. We are the one equal temper of heroic hearts. Heroic hearts are the heroism, and heroism doesn't belong to anything related to old age. So we have the equal temper, the one equal temper within everybody, and one equal temper of heroic hearts. That is the present temperament of these men. And it is made weak by time and fate. The equal temper, the typical formation of heroism, the bravery, the courage, the power that we had, these have been made weak by time and by fate. But in spite of all these, the weakening processes, I must say that we have the strong willpower. It cannot be denied. And that very willpower, the strong willpower, it is indicating towards the last line. That is the actual temperament of the whole poem, the last line. The willpower that says to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. It says that never give up hope. Never give up the struggle and admit defeat. Never admit defeat. So therefore it says, we will strive, we will seek, we will find. Each and every term is being related with the explorations, and gather some new knowledge, gather some new experiences, and think in terms of the adventures and so. So therefore it says that made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, and that particular willpower, the very willpower, we certainly say, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Never yield. Okay, never admit defeat. That is the sole temperament of this particular poem, as I've already discussed. Okay, so up to this, any question?
স্যার ওই ওয়ান ইকুয়াল টেম্পার অফ হিরোইক হার্টস ওই লাইনটা একটু বলুন।
ওয়ান ইকুয়াল টেম্পার অফ হিরোইক হার্টস মিন্স, দ্যাট মিন্স আমাদের সবার যে টেম্পারামেন্টটা রয়েছে, আমরা সবাই তো হিরোইক, মানে হিরো তো ওরা। A typical orientation of heroism is present within us all. টেম্পারটা একই, টেম্পারামেন্টটা একই,
হ্যাঁ
সেটা সবার মধ্যে রয়েছে, এটাই বলতে চাইছে।
মানে যে কোনো মানুষের যে কোনো পর্যায়ের বা যে কোনো ক্লাসের মানুষ সবার মধ্যে হিরোইজমটা রয়েছে।
হ্যাঁ, মানে ও এবং ওর যে ম্যারিনার্স তাদেরকে নিয়ে বলছে।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ বুঝতে পেরেছি।
Anything more? Any question? Do you have any question? কারোর কোনো কোশ্চেন থাকলে বলো।
আর স্যার এই শুধুমাত্র ওয়েস্টার্ন স্টার গুলোকেই কেন বলছে? স্টার তো সব জায়গায় ওঠে না।
না দেখো, তোমার সিঙ্কিং এর ওরিয়েন্টেশনটা রয়েছে, ওর মুভমেন্টটা কিন্তু ওয়েস্টের দিকে। হ্যাঁ, আগেও তোমার সিঙ্কিং স্টারের রেফারেন্স আছে, বা স্টার্স এর রেফারেন্স আছে, সেটিং সানের রেফারেন্স আছে, সবই কিন্তু তোমার ওয়েস্টার্ন মুভমেন্ট। কারণ আলটিমেটলি তার জার্নিটা ওয়েস্টের দিকেই হবে। কারণ যদি আমরা লাইফের প্রেক্ষিতে ভাবতে যাই, তাহলেও কিন্তু মানে এন্ডটা আর কি ওয়েস্টটাকে দিয়ে সূচনা করা হয় সব দিকে।
কারণ স্যার সূর্য ওখানে অস্ত যায় বলে।
এক্স্যাক্টলি, এটা একটা আর্কিটাইপের কনসেপ্ট আর কি।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ বুঝতে পেরেছি।
আর কোনো কোয়ারি? নেই
স্যার ফ্রি ফ্রি হার্ট এন্ড ফ্রি ফর ফোর হেডস এটা হচ্ছে টু স্টেট অফ লাইফ।
টু স্টেটস অফ লাইফ না, না মানে ব্যাপারটা ফ্রি হার্ট ফ্রি ফরওয়ার্ড মানে বলছে যে যেখানে তারা ওই যে বললাম না যে একটা তোমার সমুদ্রের মধ্যে বহুদিন থাকাকালীন যেটা হয় যে ওই যারা ফলোয়ার যারা থাকে তারা একটা সময় মিউটিনি করে, বিদ্রোহ করে। এরকম অনেক ঘটনা আছে যেখানে আর কি যে হেড তাকে জলে ফেলে দিয়েছে, মেরে ফেলেছে, এরকম ঘটনা ঘটে। কিন্তু এরা সেরকম নয় আর কি, বুঝতে পেরেছো? ফ্রি ফরওয়ার্ডস মানে হচ্ছে যারা কারোর মানে আজ্ঞাবহ নয়, মানে শুনবে না, তারা মিউটিনি করবে, সেগুলোকে তারা অপোজ করে গেছে। বা এটাও তুমি বলতে পারো যারা ওদের বিরোধিতা করেছে ইন দ্য ল্যান্ডস অবভিয়াসলি, সে তাদেরকেও হয়তো ওরা অপোজ করেছে, সেটাও বলে যেতে পারে।
হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে।
ক্লিয়ার?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
ওকে, ঠিক আছে, এই অবধি তাহলে। আবার নেক্সট দিন তাহলে মাই লাস্ট জাস্টিস পড়াবো, হ্যাঁ?
আচ্ছা স্যার।
ঠিক আছে। অন্যদিকে এগুলো কি করছো তোমরা, মানে বাকি যেগুলো পড়া টড়া?
স্যার আপনার ওই ইউটিউব থেকে স্কট